I was 67 when my son's wife told me I wasn't welcome for Thanksgiving dinner, and all because I'd brought a homemade apple pie instead of the store-bought pumpkin she'd requested. My son Gregory stood silently in the background of the video call, his eyes fixed on something off-screen, refusing to meet my gaze. I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, watching as 30 years of motherhood crumbled before my eyes. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Margaret, I don't think you understand, Vanessa said, her perfectly manicured finger wagging at the camera. This is the third time you've deliberately gone against my wishes. First the Christmas decorations that triggered my seasonal allergies, then the perfume at Easter despite knowing I'm sensitive to fragrances, and now this. I tried to speak, my voice catching. Vanessa, it was just an apple pie. I didn't know. You knew exactly what you were doing, she cut in, her voice sharp as a blade. I specifically asked for Cornwell's pumpkin pie. This passive-aggressive behavior has to stop. Gregory shifted in his seat behind her but remained silent. I'd raised him alone after his father passed when he was just 12. All those years of double shifts at the hospital as a nurse, stretching every dollar, attending every baseball game despite bone-deep exhaustion. And now he wouldn't even speak up when his wife banned his mother from Thanksgiving dinner. "Greg," I whispered, hoping for some intervention, some sign that our bond still mattered. He cleared his throat, finally looking at the camera. "Mom, maybe it's better if you sit this one out. Vanessa's parents are coming and, well, it's just easier this way. Less tension." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. Less tension? It's Thanksgiving, Greg. Family is supposed to be together. Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. We are having family together, just not all family. I felt a tear slide down my cheek but quickly wiped it away. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. "And what about the loan?" I asked quietly. "The money I gave you for the down payment on the lakehouse? The one you're hosting Thanksgiving dinner in?" The $175,000 I'd lent them 3 months ago had come from selling my home of 40 years. The little 2-bedroom where I'd raised Gregory, where every doorframe had pencil marks tracking his growth, where my late husband Albert had planted the cherry tree that still bloomed each spring. I'd moved into a small apartment afterward, telling myself that at least the money was helping my son, that I was still needed, still valuable. Vanessa's expression hardened. That was a gift, Margaret. A mother supporting her son's dreams. Don't try to weaponize your generosity now. "It wasn't a gift," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It was a loan. We signed papers. Greg promised to start repayments after the holidays." Gregory's face flushed. "Mom, let's not get into this now. We can talk about the money another time?" "Another time," I repeated hollowly. "Like after you've enjoyed Thanksgiving dinner without me?" The silence stretched between us, 3 generations of history straining against Vanessa's immovable will. "I think we're done here," she finally said, reaching for the disconnect button. "Wait," I said quickly. "What about Emma? Does my granddaughter know I'm not coming?" A flicker of something, guilt perhaps, crossed Gregory's face. 9-year-old Emma and I had a special bond. Every Wednesday afternoon, she came to my apartment after school, and we baked together while she told me about her friends, her teachers, the book she was reading. "Emma will understand," Vanessa answered for him. "She knows that adults sometimes need space from each other." The call ended, leaving me staring at my reflection in the darkened phone screen. An old woman with silver hair and eyes brimming with unshed tears looked back at me. I barely recognized myself. Later that evening, I sat at my small kitchen table with the loan paperwork spread before me. The official language stated clearly, "This sum constitutes a personal loan with repayment to begin December 1st, with a mutually agreed interest rate of 2% annually." I remembered how quickly they'd accepted my offer. How Vanessa had gushed about finally having a vacation property worthy of her position as regional marketing director. How Gregory had promised Emma would have her own room for when I visited. All lies. In 3 months, I'd never once been invited to the lakehouse I'd helped them buy. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Grandma, is it true you're not coming for Thanksgiving? Mom says you're not feeling well. I can bring you soup," my granddaughter, thinking I was ill rather than unwanted. Another lie they'd told to cover the ugliness of the truth. I texted back, "I'm okay, sweetheart. We'll have our own special day soon, I promise." Then I reached for my address book and flipped to the entry I'd never thought I'd need. Patricia Winters, attorney at law. We'd worked together at the hospital for 20 years before she switched careers. She'd helped me with the loan paperwork, insisting on formal documentation even when I'd said I trusted my son. "Family and money get complicated, Maggie," she'd warned. "Better to have everything in writing." How right she'd been. With hands that trembled slightly, I dialed her number. It was nearly 9 p.m., but Patricia had always been a night owl. "Maggie?" Her familiar voice brought immediate comfort. "Everything okay?" I took a deep breath. "I need to formally call in the loan I gave Gregory and Vanessa. All of it, as soon as legally possible." A pause. "That's a big step, Maggie. Want to tell me what happened?" As I recounted the video call, the dismissal, the lies, my voice grew stronger. By the time I finished, I felt a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. "They don't get to take my money and my dignity," I said. "Not both." Patricia's tone was gentle but professional. "I can file the paperwork tomorrow. The terms are clear. They'll have to either begin repayment immediately or return the full amount. But Maggie, this might change your relationship with them permanently." I looked around my small apartment, at the walls adorned with photos of a family that no longer existed as I'd believed it did. At the apple pie sitting on my counter, made with love for people who didn't want it. "The relationship has already changed," I said quietly. "They just didn't bother to tell me until now." After hanging up, I walked to the window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, my son and his wife were planning a Thanksgiving celebration, without the woman who had given them the means to host it. But not for long. Not anymore. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The day after my call with Patricia, I woke to a series of increasingly frantic text messages from Gregory. The first came at 5:47 a.m. "Mom, what's going on? I just got an email from your lawyer." The next at 6:15. "Please call me. Not Vanessa, just me." And finally, at 7:30, "Mom, this isn't funny anymore. We need to talk about this loan situation." I made myself a cup of tea and watched the sunrise through my apartment window before responding. The strange calm that had settled over me last night remained. For years, I'd put everyone else first. My patients when I was working, my husband during his long illness, my son throughout his life. When had I last stood up for myself? At precisely 8 a.m., I texted back, "Gregory, I'm invoking the terms of our signed agreement. Nothing to discuss." My phone rang immediately. I declined the call. It rang again. And again. I silenced it and went about my morning routine. Somehow, the oatmeal tasted better today. The autumn light seemed sharper, more vivid. I'd forgotten how empowering it felt to set a boundary and hold it. Around 10 a.m., there was a knock at my door. I knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. Gregory stood in the hallway, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled. His button-down shirt was wrinkled, his hair uncombed. He looked like the little boy who'd come to my bedroom after nightmares, seeking comfort. But we weren't in that world anymore. "Mom," he said when I opened the door. "What are you doing?" I gestured for him to enter but didn't offer a hug. Exactly what the loan agreement allows me to do. He paced my small living room, running his hands through his hair. We had an understanding. You said we could start payments after the holidays. And you said I'd be part of those holidays, I replied evenly. Things change. This is about Thanksgiving? Seriously? His voice rose. One dinner, and you're willing to put our house at risk? I sat down carefully in my favorite armchair, the one I'd kept when I sold nearly everything else. It's not your house, Greg. It's a vacation property that you use a few weekends a month. It's an investment, and we've already put money into renovations. With what money? I asked. The money from your trust that I released early? Or the money from your father's life insurance that I shared with you instead of using for my retirement? His face flushed. That's not fair. No, I agreed. It's not fair. None of this is fair. My son allowing his wife to exclude me from family gatherings isn't fair. Being treated like an ATM instead of a mother isn't fair. Having my granddaughter lied to about why I'm not present isn't fair. Gregory slumped onto my sofa. Vanessa can be difficult. I know that. But she's under a lot of pressure at work, and her parents are always judging our lifestyle. And that's more important than how she treats your mother? He had no answer for that. Do you know what day it is today, Gregory? I asked softly. He blinked, confused. Thursday? November 7th? It's the anniversary of your father's death, I said. 15 years today. I visited his grave alone yesterday. I'd hoped you might join me, but you didn't respond to my message. Guilt flashed across his face. I forgot. Work has been crazy, and Vanessa wanted to finalize the Thanksgiving guest list. But you found time to drive across town today when your lakehouse was threatened, I observed. We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, a school bus rumbled past, children's laughter briefly floating through my window. What do you want? Mom? He finally asked. We can't pay back $175,000 all at once. Even with my bonus, we'd need time. I know, I said. That's why the original agreement included a payment plan. I reached for a folder on my side table and handed it to him. Inside was a new agreement that Patricia had drafted last night and emailed me early this morning. These are my terms, I explained as he scanned the document. First, I will be included in family gatherings, without conditions, without walking on eggshells. Second, you will begin monthly payments of $1,500 starting immediately, not after the holidays. Third, my visits with Emma continue regardless of what's happening between you, me, and Vanessa. His eyebrows rose. You're using money to control our relationship? The accusation stung, but I held my ground. No, I'm establishing what I need to feel respected in this family. You and Vanessa used your need for a lakehouse to extract money from me. I'm simply making sure I'm not forgotten once the check is cashed. Vanessa will never agree to this. Then sell the lakehouse and repay the loan in full, I said simply. Your choice. Gregory's phone buzzed with texts, likely Vanessa wondering where he was. He ignored them, staring at the document in his hands. I never meant to hurt you, Mom, he said quietly. Things just evolved this way. Things don't evolve, Gregory. People make choices. You chose to stay silent when Vanessa excluded me. You chose not to visit your father's grave. You chose to lie to Emma rather than stand up to your wife. His shoulders sagged under the weight of these truths. I miss Dad today, he admitted. He would have known what to do. Your father would have been heartbroken, I said, my voice gentle despite the harsh words. He always believed you would become a man who stood by his principles. For the first time since arriving, Gregory truly looked at me, not as an obstacle or a financial resource, but as a person, his mother, someone with feelings and dignity. I'll talk to Vanessa, he said, standing to leave. But I can't promise how she'll react. I'm not asking for promises anymore, I replied. just actions. After he left, I allowed myself a small moment of doubt. Had I gone too far? Would this destroy what little relationship we had left? But then I remembered Vanessa's dismissive tone, Gregory's silent complicity, the casual cruelty of being uninvited from a family gathering in a house I had helped them acquire. No, I hadn't gone too far. Perhaps for the first time in decades, I'd finally gone far enough. My phone chimed with a text from Emma's mother-approved phone. "Grandma, can I still come? Over after school for baking tomorrow? Mom seems mad at Dad and you. Is everything okay?" I closed my eyes briefly, centering myself. Emma shouldn't be caught in the middle of this. "Of course, sweetheart," I texted back. "We'll make snickerdoodles. Everything will be fine." Whether that was true remained to be seen. But for now, I had taken back something precious, my sense of self-worth. And no lakehouse was worth more than that. 3 days after Gregory's visit, I received a text from Vanessa. No greeting, no pleasantries, just a terse message. "Fine. You're invited to Thanksgiving. 4 p.m. Don't bring anything." It was hardly the warm reconciliation I might have hoped for, but it was a start. I showed the message to Patricia over coffee that afternoon in the small cafe across from her law office. The November rain tapped against the windows, creating a cozy atmosphere despite the tension of our conversation. "She's acquiescing, but making sure you know she's not happy about it," Patricia observed, stirring her latte. "Classic power move." I sighed. "Does it matter? At least I'll see Emma." Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly. "It matters, Maggie. The agreement isn't just about physical presence, it's about respect. Don't let them tick the box of inviting you while still treating you poorly." Patricia had always been direct. It was what made her an excellent lawyer and, before that, a respected head nurse. We'd spent 20 years working together in the cardiac unit of Westlake Memorial, developing the kind of friendship that cuts through politeness to truth. "What would you have me do?" I asked. "Demand a nicer invitation?" "No." She leaned forward. "But don't be so grateful for scraps that you forget what you deserve. You're Emma's grandmother and Gregory's mother, not some distant relation they're obligated to tolerate." I nodded, considering her words. The bell above the cafe door chimed as new customers entered, shaking raindrops from their umbrellas. Among them was Beth Chen, my next-door neighbor from the apartment building. "Margaret," she called, navigating between tables to reach us. "I was hoping I'd run into you today." Beth was a retired elementary school principal, energetic and precise at 72. She'd taken me under her wing when I first moved into the building, introducing me to the weekly poker game in the community room and the best delivery places that offered senior discounts. "I need your expertise," she continued, pulling up a chair without waiting for an invitation. "The community center is planning a Thanksgiving event for seniors without family nearby, and I volunteered to coordinate the health information booth. Would you help? Just a few hours on Tuesday before the actual holiday." Patricia raised an eyebrow at me, a silent message passing between us. Here was an opportunity to be valued, to contribute, to create alternatives to sitting alone with my worries. "I'd love to," I said, feeling a small spark of excitement. I could bring blood pressure cuffs from my old kit, maybe some information about holiday heart syndrome. It's a real issue for seniors. Beth beamed. "Perfect. And there's a potluck afterward for the volunteers." She glanced at Patricia. "You're welcome too, of course." "I have family obligations," Patricia said smoothly. "But I'll donate some wine. Margaret knows what I like to bring." After Beth left with my contact information, Patricia gave me an approving nod. "That's how you do it, Maggie. Build your own life. Show Gregory that you're not sitting by the phone waiting for crumbs of his attention." My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Grandma, Mom says you're coming for Thanksgiving. Can I help you bake something?" I showed Patricia the message with a small smile. "There's one person who genuinely wants me there." "Emma's not the issue," Patricia agreed. "But be careful. Children shouldn't be messengers between adults. I knew she was right. Emma was only 9, too young to understand the complexities of adult relationships, but old enough to sense tension. I needed to protect her from feeling caught in the middle. I texted back, "Looking forward to seeing you. Let's save our baking for our special Wednesday time." As I walked Patricia back to her office, the rain easing to a gentle mist, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that I would see my family for Thanksgiving. Apprehension about how Vanessa would treat me. Anger that my relationship with my son had deteriorated to financial threats and reluctant invitations. And beneath it all, a quiet determination. I wasn't the same woman I'd been a week ago, the one who would accept exclusion to keep the peace. Something had awakened in me, something that had been dormant during all those years of caregiving and compromise. That evening, I called my sister Catherine in Arizona. We weren't particularly close. Geography and different life paths had created distance over the years, but she was still family, still someone who remembered the girl I'd been before I became a nurse, a wife, a mother. "Kathy," I said when she answered, "I need some perspective." I told her everything: the loan, the exclusion, my legal response, the grudging invitation. She listened without interrupting, the desert wind whistling faintly through her open window in the background. "You know what Mom would say," she finally responded. "She'd say it's about time you stood up for yourself." Our mother had been a formidable woman, raising 4 daughters alone after our father abandoned the family. She'd worked as a seamstress, taking on extra projects late into the night to ensure we all had education opportunities. Mom would have handled this differently from the beginning, I admitted. She never would have given away her security for a lakehouse. "Maybe," Catherine said, "or maybe she would have done exactly what you did, help her child, then expect basic decency in return. The point is, she wouldn't have let anyone treat her like an afterthought. And neither should you." After our call, I sat on my small balcony watching the city lights shimmer through the lingering raindrops. 20 stories below, people hurried along rain-slicked sidewalks, heading home to families, to empty apartments, to uncertain futures. We were all making our way as best we could. My phone chimed with a notification from my banking app. The first loan payment from Gregory had been deposited. Exactly $1,500 as agreed. No more, no less, no accompanying message. It was a transaction, not a reconciliation. But it was something. The next morning, I had breakfast with Beth to discuss the community center event. Her enthusiasm was contagious, reminding me of planning hospital fundraisers in my working days. "We could do simple health screenings," I suggested. "Blood pressure, blood sugar checks for those who want them. Holiday stress management tips." Beth nodded eagerly. "And maybe warning signs for elderly people living alone. What symptoms shouldn't wait until after the holidays to address." We spent 2 hours mapping out the booth, creating supply lists, drafting handouts. It felt good to use my nursing knowledge again, to have a purpose beyond my family drama. "You know," Beth said as we finished our second cups of coffee, "there's an opening in the center's wellness committee. They need someone with medical background to review their senior programming. 3 meetings a month, small stipend. I could recommend you." The offer caught me by surprise. "I'm not sure I'm qualified. I've been retired for 7 years. Beth waved away my concern. "Your experience doesn't expire, Margaret. Besides, they need practical knowledge, not academic credentials. Just promise you'll think about it." I found myself nodding. "I will. After Thanksgiving." Thanksgiving. The holiday loomed in my mind like an approaching storm, necessary but potentially destructive. Would Vanessa be civil? Would Gregory finally stand up for me? Would this be the beginning of healing or just another painful memory? As I walked home from breakfast, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Walker?" This is Diana Reynolds, Vanessa's mother. My heart skipped. In 10 years of Gregory and Vanessa's marriage, I'd met Diana exactly 3 times, always at large family gatherings where conversation remained superficial. Yes? I answered cautiously. I understand there's been some tension regarding Thanksgiving plans, she said, her voice carefully modulated. Vanessa mentioned you'll be joining us after all. The after all spoke volumes. That's right, I confirmed, stopping at a crosswalk and watching the pedestrian signal count down. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone. The sound conveyed polite disbelief. I just wanted to touch base directly. Vanessa can be protective of her space, but family gatherings should include family. Was this an olive branch? Hard to tell. I agree, I said simply. Good. Diana paused. And Margaret? Perhaps we could set aside the financial discussions for one day? For Emma's sake? So that was it. Vanessa had enlisted her mother to negotiate a truce. I felt a flash of indignation, then reminded myself of what mattered, seeing my granddaughter, maintaining my dignity, protecting the investment that represented my financial security. The financial arrangements are between Gregory, Vanessa, and me, I replied evenly. They won't be discussed at Thanksgiving unless someone else brings them up. The pedestrian signal changed. I crossed the street, leaving that conversation, and all it represented, behind me. The days leading up to Thanksgiving passed in a flurry of activity. Working with Beth on the community center health booth gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since retirement. We spent hours organizing pamphlets, arranging for equipment loans from a local medical supply company, and recruiting 2 other retired nurses from my building to help staff the booth. You've transformed this project, Beth told me as we finalized our layout the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Last year it was just a table with some outdated brochures. I smiled, feeling a quiet pride. It's good to use these skills again. They were gathering dust. The event itself exceeded our expectations. Dozens of seniors stopped by for blood pressure checks and wellness information. Some shared stories of holidays spent alone, others of family tensions not unlike my own. A few even recognized me from my nursing days at Westlake Memorial. You were there when they put in my stent, one elderly gentleman said, gripping my hand. 10 years ago. You explained everything, so I wasn't scared. I didn't remember him specifically. There had been so many patients over my 40-year career, but his gratitude touched me deeply. By the time we packed up and joined the volunteer potluck, I felt more myself than I had in months. Here, I wasn't. Just someone's mother or grandmother or former caregiver. I was Margaret Walker, RN, respected for my knowledge and experience. Beth introduced me to the director of the community center during dessert. Margaret's interested in the wellness committee position, she said, giving me no chance to backpedal. We'd be lucky to have you, the director replied. The stipend's modest, but we can offer complimentary classes, yoga, watercolor, whatever interests you. I found myself accepting tentatively, pending a formal interview after the holidays. As we exchanged contact information, I realized I was building a life independent of Gregory and Vanessa, one with its own rewards and connections. Wednesday arrived, my regular afternoon with Emma. She burst into my apartment with her usual energy, dropping her backpack by the door and heading straight for the kitchen. Can we make something for tomorrow? She asked, already washing her hands at the sink. Mom said not to bring anything, but I want to surprise everyone. I hesitated. Vanessa's instruction not to bring anything had been clear, but this was Emma's request, not mine. Surely a child's contribution would be accepted. What did you have in mind? I asked, joining her at the sink. Cranberry muffins, like the ones Grandpa used to love. My heart caught. Emma had been just 4 when Albert died, but we'd kept his memory alive through stories and traditions. The cranberry muffins had been his favorite holiday breakfast, something I'd made every Thanksgiving morning during our marriage. Your mom might have her own breakfast plans, I cautioned. Emma shook her head. She and Dad are sleeping in. They told me to pour cereal if I wake up first. The thought of my granddaughter eating cold cereal alone on Thanksgiving morning while her parents slept in the house I had helped them buy stirred something both sad and resolute within me. Cranberry muffins it is, I decided. We'll make enough for everyone. As we measured and mixed, Emma chattered about school, her friends, and the lakehouse. Dad says we might not be able to keep it, she mentioned casually, dropping cranberries into the batter. I kept my expression neutral. Did he explain why? Something about money and agreements. She shrugged. Mom got really upset when he brought it up. She said you were being unreasonable. I focused on helping her fold the batter, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes adults have complicated disagreements about important things, but that doesn't change how much we all love you. Emma nodded, unconvinced. Is that why you weren't coming for Thanksgiving at first? Because of the disagreement? Children always understand, more than we give them credit for. I wouldn't lie to her, but I also wouldn't burden her with adult conflicts. Part of growing up is learning that relationships take work, I said gently. Your dad and I are working things out. What matters is that we'll all be together tomorrow. She seemed satisfied with that answer, returning her attention to filling the muffin cups. When we finished, she insisted on packaging them in the special container with snowflakes that we'd used every year when Gregory was growing up. So everyone knows it's a Walker family tradition, she explained. After Emma left, I spent the evening preparing myself mentally for the next day. I selected a modest but elegant outfit, a deep burgundy sweater dress with a simple gold necklace Albert had given me on our last anniversary. I painted my nails for the first time in months. Small rituals of self-respect. Patricia called to check in. Remember, she said, you've already won the important battle. You're included. Now it's about maintaining your dignity regardless of how they behave. What if Vanessa makes a scene about the loan in front of everyone? I asked, voicing my deepest concern. Then you calmly state that financial matters are best discussed privately and return to passing the sweet potatoes, Patricia advised. Don't engage, don't defend, don't apologize. You've done nothing wrong. I tried to sleep, but found myself awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling. The irony wasn't lost on me. Thanksgiving had always been my favorite holiday, the one where I poured my heart into creating perfect memories for my family. Now I approached it with dread, armoring myself against potential hurt. During those quiet, dark hours, I found myself thinking about Albert and what he would say about all this. He'd been a gentleman but firm in his principles. People treat you how you teach them to treat you, he'd often told Gregory during his teenage years. Had I taught my son that I would accept any treatment as long as it kept the peace? By morning, I felt calmer. Whatever happened at dinner, I would face it, with the grace and strength I'd rediscovered in myself these past weeks. Emma texted a photo of the family enjoying the cranberry muffins, her smile bright, Gregory looking surprisingly relaxed, Vanessa's parents in the background. Vanessa herself was absent from the frame, taking the photo, perhaps, or possibly avoiding participation in this small rebellion against her bring-nothing edict. I dressed carefully, packed a small gift for Emma, a bracelet made of semi-precious stones I'd found at a local artisan shop, and called a rideshare service rather than asking Gregory to pick me up. Independence, even in small ways, felt important today. The lakehouse was indeed impressive, a modern structure of glass and stone perched on a wooded lot overlooking Cedar Lake. As the car approached down the long driveway, I could see multiple vehicles already parked outside. Vanessa's red BMW, her parents' luxury SUV, another car I didn't recognize, perhaps friends or other relatives I hadn't been told about. The driver helped me out with surprising deference. Happy Thanksgiving, ma'am. Hope it's a good one. Thank you. I replied, straightening my shoulders and approaching the front door. I hope so too. I rang the doorbell, listening to voices and laughter inside. For a moment, I felt a flash of insecurity. What if Vanessa had changed her mind? What if I was about to face another rejection, this time in person? The door swung open. Gregory stood there, an unreadable expression on his face. "Mom," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "You're here." "I am," I confirmed, stepping forward. "Happy Thanksgiving." He moved aside to let me enter, and I stepped across the threshold into whatever awaited me inside. The interior of the lakehouse took my breath away. Soaring ceilings with exposed wooden beams, a wall of windows overlooking the water, and tasteful modern furnishings that must have cost a fortune. My $175,000 loan had clearly been just the beginning of their investment in this place. Emma spotted me immediately and ran across the room. "Grandma! You came!" She threw her arms around my waist, and for a moment, everything felt right. "Of course, I did," I said, hugging her back. "I wouldn't miss spending Thanksgiving with you." Vanessa emerged from the kitchen, wearing an elegant cream sweater and dark slacks, a carefully neutral smile fixed on her face. "Margaret, welcome." Her tone was polite but cool, like a hostess greeting a distant acquaintance rather than family. "Thank you for having me," I replied with equal formality, presenting the small gift bag I'd brought for Emma. "Just a little something for my granddaughter." Vanessa's eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing about the gift, despite her "bring nothing" instruction. Instead, she gestured toward a seating area where her parents were engaged in conversation with another couple. "You remember my parents, Diana and Richard, and these are our friends, the Holbrooks. Martin works with Gregory at the firm." I greeted everyone, noting that the Holbrooks seemed surprised by my presence. Perhaps they'd been told I wouldn't be attending. Diana Reynolds gave me a thin smile and a nod that seemed to say, "See? We included you as promised." "The muffins were delicious, Margaret," Richard said, breaking the awkward moment. "Emma tells us they were a family tradition." "My husband's favorite," I confirmed, grateful for the conversational lifeline. "Albert insisted on them every Thanksgiving morning." "Dad used to eat 4 at once," Emma chimed in. "Mom has his picture in her office." Vanessa stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Why don't you show everyone your bracelet, Emma? Then perhaps you could help set the table." As Emma excitedly displayed her gift, I caught Gregory watching from across the room, where he was mixing drinks at a small bar cart. His expression was unreadable, but he raised his glass slightly in what might have been acknowledgement. The next hour passed in carefully choreographed social interaction. I sat with the Holbrooks, answering their polite questions about my nursing career while Vanessa bustled between kitchen and dining room, directing the final dinner preparations. She hadn't asked for my help, and I hadn't offered, a notable departure from every previous family gathering. Diana eventually joined us, her curiosity apparently overcoming her reserve. "Emma mentioned you're working at a community center now? I thought you were fully retired." "Just volunteering," I clarified, "though they've offered me a position on their wellness committee." "How nice," she replied, her tone suggesting the opposite. "At your age, it's important to stay active." I smiled, refusing to take the bait. "At any age, it's important to feel useful." Diana studied me with new interest. "You seem different, Margaret. More assertive." Before I could respond, Gregory called everyone to the table. The dining room featured a magnificent harvest display. Gourds, autumn leaves, and pillar candles arranged around a massive turkey on a bed of herbs. Vanessa had clearly spent hours creating the perfect tableau. "Beautiful table," I commented as we took our seats. Vanessa nodded stiffly. "Thank you." I was placed between Emma and Martin Holbrook, directly across from Diana, a strategic seating. arrangement that kept me separated from both Gregory and Vanessa, who sat at opposite ends of the table. The distance wasn't subtle. Gregory raised his glass. "Before we eat, I'd like to propose a toast to family and friends gathered here today." Everyone lifted their glasses. I noticed he hadn't specifically acknowledged my presence, but I refused to let it bother me. This wasn't about ego. It was about maintaining my place in my granddaughter's life. Dinner proceeded with the forced pleasantries typical of gatherings where tension simmers beneath the surface. The conversation stayed carefully neutral: recent films, Emma's school achievements, the unseasonably warm weather. No one mentioned the lakehouse, the loan, or the circumstances of my invitation. Until dessert. "More pie, Margaret?" Richard asked, passing the pumpkin pie Vanessa had specifically requested from Cornwell's bakery. "No, thank you. It's delicious. But I'm saving room for coffee." "Smart," he replied. "Diana and I are actually cutting back on desserts these days. Doctor's orders. And with the way property taxes are rising around the lake, we'll all need to economize." A charged silence fell over the table. The subject of money, even tangentially, had been introduced. Diana shot her husband a warning look. "Richard." "What?" "Just making conversation." He seemed genuinely oblivious to the undercurrents. "Speaking of the lake, Greg, how's that boathouse renovation coming along? Find a contractor who won't charge a king's ransom?" Gregory cleared his throat. "We've put that project on hold for now. Budgetary constraints," Vanessa added with pointed emphasis, glancing my way. And there it was, the first crack in the facade. Emma looked between her parents and me, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "Is that because of the grown-up disagreement? About the money?" The table went completely silent. Martin Holbrook suddenly became very interested in his napkin. His wife examined her wedding ring. Diana closed her eyes briefly. "Emma," Vanessa said tightly, "we don't discuss financial matters at the dinner table. But that's why Grandma almost didn't come, right? Because of the lakehouse money thing?" Gregory set down his fork. "Emma, that's enough." "But I said enough." His voice was sharper than I'd ever heard him use with his daughter. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She pushed back from the table and ran from the room. The silence that followed was deafening. I carefully placed my napkin beside my plate and stood. "I'll go talk to her." "Sit down," Vanessa ordered. "I'll handle my daughter." "Our daughter," Gregory corrected quietly. I ignored them both and followed Emma. I found her on the back deck, huddled on a cushioned bench, staring out at the lake. I sat beside her without speaking, simply offering my presence. "Everyone's mad at each other because of me," she finally whispered. "No, sweetheart," I said firmly. "Not because of you, never because of you. But I'm the one who asked about the money at dinner." I put my arm around her shoulders. Adults have disagreements sometimes. About important things like money, yes, but also about how we treat each other. Those disagreements aren't your fault or your responsibility to fix. She leaned against me. "Dad says we might have to sell this house. I don't want to. I love the lake." My heart ached. I hadn't considered how the financial dispute might affect Emma's sense of stability. For a moment, I questioned whether I'd done the right thing in calling in the loan. "Whatever happens with this house," I said carefully, "the important things won't change. Your parents love you. I love you. That stays the same no matter where we live or spend holidays." The sliding door opened behind us. Gregory stood there, his expression a complex mixture of anger, embarrassment, and concern. "Emma, come inside. It's getting chilly." "In a minute, Dad," she replied, not moving from my side. He hesitated, then stepped onto the deck, closing the door behind him. "Mom, I think it's best if you leave now." I met his gaze steadily. "Because Emma asked an uncomfortable question? Or because I came after her when she was upset?" Because this entire situation is your creation, he said, his voice low but intense. You could have waited to address the loan. You chose Thanksgiving week to make your point. And what point would that be? I asked. That you have power over us. That you can disrupt our lives if we don't bend to your wishes. I shook my head, saddened by his interpretation. No, Gregory. The point was that I deserved to be treated with basic respect, not excluded from family gatherings, not relegated to sleeping in a shed when Vanessa's parents visit, not treated as an inconvenience after providing the money that helped buy this house. Emma looked up at me, confusion in her eyes. You slept in a shed, Grandma? Gregory flushed. It wasn't. He stopped, perhaps realizing there was no way to explain that would sound reasonable. I patted Emma's hand. Different houses have different sleeping arrangements, that's all. The sliding door opened again. Vanessa stepped out, followed by her mother. What's going on out here? Vanessa demanded. The Holbrooks are asking if everything's all right. Everything's fine, Gregory replied automatically. Mom was just leaving. Diana moved to Emma's side. Why don't you come help me serve coffee to our guests, sweetheart? Let the adults talk. Emma hesitated, looking at me uncertainly. It's okay, I assured her. Go ahead. I'll see you next Wednesday for our usual baking time. She gave me a quick hug before following her grandmother inside, leaving me alone with Gregory and Vanessa on the deck. Well, Vanessa said once the door closed, I hope you're satisfied. You've thoroughly ruined Thanksgiving. I stood, pulling my cardigan closer, against the November chill. I didn't bring up the loan at dinner. Your father-in-law did. Because it's all anyone can think about, she snapped. You holding this financial sword over our heads. I'm enforcing a legal agreement that you both signed, I corrected. An agreement you were happy with until it came with the expectation of basic courtesy. Gregory stepped between us. This isn't the time or place, either of you. When is the time, Gregory? I asked. When you need more money? When it's convenient for you and Vanessa? When does your mother become a priority in your life? Gregory stared at me, his face flushed. The silence between us stretched uncomfortably as the gentle lapping of water against the shoreline filled the void. In his eyes, I could see something I hadn't noticed before, not just anger or frustration, but genuine confusion, as if he truly couldn't understand why I was making such a fuss. Mom, he finally said, his voice softer, I've always respected you. I've always appreciated everything you've done for us. Appreciation isn't the same as respect, Gregory, I replied, and neither is shown through exclusion. Vanessa made a dismissive sound. This whole situation is ridiculous. We invited you today, didn't we? Despite your financial strong-arming? Turned to face her directly. Is that what you think this is? Strong-arming? I gave you $175,000, money that represented my home, my security, my future. All I asked in return was to be treated with basic dignity. We never meant, Gregory began, but Vanessa cut him off. We don't owe you special treatment just because you're his mother. My parents contributed to this house too, and they don't expect to dictate our lives. I raised an eyebrow. Do they sleep in the shed when they visit? Gregory at least had the decency to look ashamed. That was one time, Mom. The guest room wasn't finished yet, and Diana has allergies. And I don't? I shook my head. The shed didn't even have proper heating. Vanessa crossed her arms. You're exaggerating. It was perfectly adequate. I thought about continuing the argument, laying out every slight, every exclusion, every moment I'd been made to feel unwelcome over the past years. But looking at their faces, Gregory's conflicted, Vanessa's defensive, I realized something important. This wasn't a battle I could win with words, not tonight, perhaps not ever. I think I will leave now, I said quietly. Please tell Emma I'll see her on Wednesday. Gregory hesitated, then nodded. I'll call you a ride. Already done, I replied, showing him my phone. The car was arriving in 3 minutes. Vanessa looked momentarily relieved, then caught herself. You don't have to go. The Holbrooks will think something's wrong. Something is wrong, I said simply, and pretending otherwise doesn't fix it. I walked through the house, saying polite goodbyes to the guests, ignoring their curious glances. Emma ran to hug me at the door, whispering, I'm sorry, Grandma. Nothing for you to be sorry about, I assured her, kissing her forehead. See you Wednesday. The ride home was quiet, the driver sensing my mood and respectfully leaving me to my thoughts. I watched the darkening landscape pass by, lake views, giving way to suburban developments, then city lights. By the time we reached my apartment building, I felt emotionally drained but strangely clear-headed. Beth was sitting in the lobby, reading a novel. She looked up as I entered. You're back early. It wasn't the reconciliation I'd hoped for, I admitted. She closed her book. Want to talk about it? I've got leftover pumpkin cheesecake and a bottle of Merlot upstairs. An hour later, sitting. In Beth's cozy apartment with a half-empty wine glass and a sympathetic ear, I found myself laughing despite everything. And then Diana, Vanessa's mother, actually said, At your age, it's important to stay active. As if I'm some doddering, old woman who needs to be patted on the head for still functioning. Beth snorted. You could run circles around both those women, emotionally and physically. I'm not sure about that, I said, suddenly serious. But I am sure about one thing. I can't keep doing this, hoping for respect, settling for scraps of inclusion, feeling hurt when I'm excluded. It's exhausting. So what will you do? Beth asked. I considered the question. I think I need to build a life that doesn't revolve around hoping for Gregory's attention. The community center position. I'm going to take it, and I'm going to continue seeing Emma for our Wednesday baking sessions. Beyond that? I shrugged. We'll see what happens with the loan. You're not giving in on that? Good. No. I shook my head firmly. That money is my security. If they can't respect me as Gregory's mother, they can at least respect me as their creditor. Over the next few days, I threw myself into activities that had nothing to do with my family drama. I formally accepted the wellness committee position at the community center. I joined Beth's book club. I reconnected with former nursing colleagues for lunch. Through it all, Emma's weekly visit remained a bright constant. The Wednesday after Thanksgiving, she arrived with her usual exuberance, but also a hint of worry in her eyes. Are you mad at Dad and Mom? She asked as we mixed cookie dough. Not mad, I said carefully. Disappointed. Sometimes grown-ups disagree about how to treat each other, but that doesn't change how any of us feel about you. She nodded sagely. They fight a lot now, about the lakehouse and the money and stuff. My heart sank. The last thing I wanted was for Emma to be caught in the crossfire. I'm sorry to hear that. How are you feeling about it? Dad said we might move to a smaller house in the city. I'd be closer to you. Her face brightened. And closer to my school friends. I was touched by her positivity but concerned about what it might indicate about Gregory and Vanessa's financial situation. Were they genuinely unable to manage the loan? Repayments? If so, why hadn't Gregory approached me directly instead of letting the situation deteriorate? My questions were partially answered the next day when Patricia called. Gregory's asked to renegotiate the loan terms, she said without preamble. He wants a 1-year deferment on payments. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. Did he say, why? Apparently, Vanessa's been put on performance improvement at work, potential downsizing in her department. They're worried about maintaining payments if she loses her job. The information landed like a stone in my stomach. Suddenly, their resistance to repaying the loan took on a different dimension. Not just entitlement or dismissiveness, but genuine financial anxiety. What should I do? I asked. Patricia's voice softened. That's entirely up to you, Maggie. Legally, you have every right to stick to the original agreement. But emotionally, it's more complicated, I finished for her. Exactly. Take some time to think about it. No need to respond immediately. After hanging up, I poured myself a cup of tea and sat by my window, watching the winter light fade over the city. The situation presented a crossroads of sorts. I could stand my ground, insist on the payments as agreed, and maintain the boundary I'd drawn. Or I could offer flexibility and recognition of their circumstances, potentially opening the door to reconciliation. But would financial assistance without addressing the underlying issues of respect and inclusion really change anything? Or would it just reset the pattern, with me giving and giving while receiving little in return? I thought about Emma, caught between warring factions of the family she loved. About Gregory, who despite his failings was still the little boy I'd raised alone, the young man whose father had missed seeing him graduate, get married, become a father himself. And yes, even about Vanessa, whose sharp edges might be masking her own insecurities and fears. The loan had become both leverage and barrier, a way to ensure I wasn't entirely dismissed, but also an obstacle to genuine healing. Money had power, certainly, but was it the kind of power I wanted to wield in my relationship with my son? I reached for my phone, not entirely sure what I would say, but knowing I needed to speak to Gregory directly, not through lawyers or text messages, but face-to-face, as mother and son, without Vanessa's mediating presence. "Can we meet tomorrow?" I asked when he answered. "Just the two of us. We need to talk." We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. I arrived early, choosing a corner table with some privacy. The morning crowd had thinned, leaving just a few scattered patrons typing on laptops or reading newspapers. I ordered a pot of Earl Grey tea, enough for two, and waited. Gregory arrived precisely on time, still in his work attire, a charcoal suit with a burgundy tie. He looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from carrying too many worries for too long. He spotted me and nodded, stopping at the counter to order a coffee before joining me. "Thank you for meeting," I said as he sat down. "Patricia called you about the deferment request." It wasn't a question. Yes. But that's not the only reason I wanted to talk. He sighed, loosening his tie slightly. "Mom, if this is about Thanksgiving..." "It's about everything, Gregory. The loan, yes, but also the way we've been with each other these past few years." I poured tea into my cup, letting the familiar ritual calm my nerves. When did we start needing lawyers and formal agreements to communicate? His coffee arrived. He thanked the server and stirred in cream, avoiding my gaze. Things got complicated. Life is always complicated. Family shouldn't be. Gregory finally looked up, his eyes, so much like his father's, meeting mine directly. "Vanessa's probably going to lose her job." The blunt admission surprised me. "I'm sorry to hear that. The marketing department's being restructured, her position's being eliminated, and there's only one senior role available. She's competing against people with more experience." He took a sip of coffee. "We've been fighting about it for weeks. That's part of why she was so difficult about Thanksgiving. You could have told me this instead of making me feel unwelcome." He had the grace to look ashamed. "I know. But Vanessa, she has a hard time showing vulnerability, especially to you." "To me? Why?" Gregory hesitated. "She thinks you don't approve of her, that you've always thought she wasn't good enough for me." The accusation stung, partly because there was a kernel of truth in it. I hadn't always understood Vanessa's sharp edges, her ambition, her sometimes cold practicality. But disapproval? That seemed excessive. "I've always wanted you to be happy," I said carefully. "If Vanessa makes you happy, that's what matters to me." "Does it?" His question was pointed. "Because sometimes it feels like you're judging our choices." The lakehouse, for instance. I thought it was excessive, I admitted, but I still gave you the money because it mattered to you. And now you're using that money to control us. I shook my head firmly. No, Gregory. I'm using my legal rights to ensure I'm not taken advantage of. There's a difference. He leaned forward. Mom, the payments. We can't make them right now. Not with Vanessa's job situation. That's why I'm asking for the deferment. And what happens to the lakehouse if she loses her job entirely? If you can't afford the mortgage? We'd probably have to sell, he admitted. But we'd pay you back in full from the proceeds. I stirred my tea, contemplating the rippling surface. That might be the sensible thing to do anyway, regardless of the loan. If your financial situation is precarious, it's not just about finances, Gregory interrupted. Emma loves that house. It's become her safe place, especially with all the tension at home lately. The mention of my granddaughter shifted something in me. How is she handling everything? A shadow crossed his face. Not well. She's picked up on more than we realized. Last night she asked if we were getting divorced. Are you? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Gregory looked startled, then weary. Honestly, I don't know. This financial stress has exposed cracks that were already there. Vanessa's different from the woman I married. Or maybe I'm just seeing sides of her I was blind to before. For the first time in years, my son was speaking to me as an adult, sharing his genuine concerns rather than presenting a polished facade. I wanted to preserve this fragile new honesty between us. What do you want, Greg? Not what Vanessa wants, or what you think you should want. What do you want? He seemed taken aback by the question. I want Emma to be happy. I want financial stability. I want a marriage where you're respected, a home where you feel at peace, I suggested gently. His eyes widened slightly. Yes, that's exactly it. He paused. And I want my mother in my life. Emma needs you. I need you. The admission warmed something long cold inside me. I've always been here, Gregory. I'm not the one who pulled away. No, but you set conditions on your presence. The loan terms are about financial security, I clarified. My expectations about being treated with respect are separate. Would you really want me to accept being excluded, dismissed, or relegated to the shed just to keep the peace? He flinched at the mention of the shed incident. No, that was wrong. I should have stood up to Vanessa about that. Yes, you should. Have. I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. Gregory, I'm your mother. I love you unconditionally. But loving unconditionally doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. He nodded slowly. I understand that now. But the loan? Let's talk about solutions, I said. What would make this situation workable for everyone? Gregory seemed relieved at the shift to practical matters. If we could defer payments for 6 months, it would give us time to see what happens with Vanessa's job. If she's laid off, we'd sell the lakehouse. If she keeps a position, even at reduced salary, we might be able to refinance the mortgage and resume payments to you. I considered this proposal. It seemed reasonable, but something about it still troubled me. And where do I fit into this plan besides financially? Will I still be an outsider in my own family? No, he said firmly. That needs to change regardless of what happens with the money. Emma adores you, and He hesitated. I miss how things used to be between us. Before Vanessa? I asked softly. Before I forgot my priorities, he corrected. The lakehouse, Vanessa's career ambitions, all the trappings of success. I got caught up in it. But lately, I've been remembering what Dad used to say about wealth. I smiled faintly. That the only wealth worth having is family and health. Everything else is just decoration. Exactly, Gregory squeezed my hand. I lost sight of that. We all did. The moment felt pivotal, a genuine reconnection after years of growing distance. Part of me wanted to seize it, to accept his explanation and move forward. But the practical side of me, the side that had protected both of us through difficult times, urged caution. "I'll consider the deferment," I said finally. "But I'd like something in writing about what happens if you sell the lakehouse, and I want weekly family dinners, at my apartment, not just when it's convenient for Vanessa. Emma and you, every Sunday." "I can agree to that," he said. "But Vanessa can join when she's ready," I finished for him. "I'm not trying to exclude her, Gregory. I'm just not willing to be excluded myself anymore." He nodded slowly. "That seems fair." We talked for another hour, covering practical matters but also reconnecting in ways that felt healing for both of us. By the time we parted, something had shifted. The wall between us hadn't completely crumbled, but there were definite cracks, letting light through. Gregory hugged me before leaving, a real embrace, not the perfunctory one I'd grown accustomed to. "I'll talk to Vanessa tonight," he promised, "and I'll bring Emma on Sunday, regardless of what happens with that conversation." As I watched him walk away, I felt cautiously optimistic. The road ahead wouldn't be smooth. There were still financial concerns, Vanessa's resistance, and years of established patterns to overcome. But for the first time in a long while, it felt like we were moving in the right direction. When I returned home, I found an email from the community center confirming my first official committee meeting the following week. My new life was taking shape alongside my efforts to repair the old one. Whatever happened with Gregory and Vanessa, I would no longer be defined solely by my role as mother and grandmother. I had value beyond those relationships, something I had forgotten during my years of caregiving and compromise. The realization was both liberating and slightly terrifying. At 67, I was reclaiming parts of myself I'd set aside decades ago. The question now was whether my family could accept this more complete version of Margaret Walker, not just the accommodating mother and grandmother, but a woman with her own boundaries, interests, and dignity. Sunday arrived with a light dusting of snow, the first of the season. I spent the morning preparing a simple but hearty meal: beef stew that had simmered overnight, fresh bread from the bakery downstairs, and an apple crisp for dessert. Emma had mentioned it was her favorite during our last baking session. My apartment wasn't large, but I'd arranged the small dining table with care, using the good dishes that had been wedding gifts from Albert's parents, white with a delicate blue pattern that had survived 40 years of family meals. I'd added candles and a small vase of white chrysanthemums, not extravagant, but welcoming. At precisely 5 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I smoothed my sweater and took a deep breath before answering. Emma bounded in first, cheeks pink from the cold. "Grandma, it smells amazing in here." Gregory followed, stamping snow from his boots in the hallway before entering. "Hey, Mom." He handed me a bottle of wine and a small bouquet of winter flowers. "Thank you for having us." I noticed the us immediately. Vanessa wasn't with them. I'd prepared for her presence, an extra place setting, careful planning of conversation topics, but part of me was relieved at her absence. This first rebuilding dinner might be easier without her. "Is Vanessa joining us?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Gregory's expression tightened slightly. "Not tonight. She sends her regrets." Emma rolled her eyes in a gesture that seemed startlingly adult. "They had another fight, about money and the lakehouse and stuff." "Emma," Gregory's voice held a warning. "Well, it's true," she muttered, but she dropped the subject and moved to the kitchen, peering into the pot of stew. "Can I help set the table or something?" "It's already done, sweetheart. But you could help me slice the bread." As Emma busied herself with the bread knife, Gregory moved closer, speaking quietly. "Vanessa and I had a long talk after you and I met. It didn't go well. She feels cornered." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. and meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want my son's marriage to suffer. Is there anything I can do? He shook his head. This isn't your problem to fix, Mom. Vanessa needs to come to terms with our new financial reality, and with the fact that you're an important part of our family. He glanced at Emma, who was carefully arranging bread slices in a basket. Now, let's just enjoy dinner, okay? It's been too long since we did this. I nodded, understanding the request to set aside heavier topics for the evening. Wine? I offered, reaching for glasses. Dinner progressed better than I could have hoped. The conversation flowed naturally, focused mainly on Emma's school activities and Gregory's less stressful work projects. We shared memories of past family dinners, including the time 10-year-old Gregory had attempted to make Thanksgiving dinner himself after I'd been called into an emergency hospital shift. The turkey was still frozen in the middle, I recalled, laughing, and you'd used an entire bottle of dried sage in the stuffing. It was the only spice I could find, Gregory protested, smiling. Dad was no help at all. He just kept saying, "Your mother would know what to do," and ordering pizza. I wish I remembered Grandpa better, Emma said wistfully. I only have little bits and pieces in my mind. Like what? I asked gently. She twisted her napkin, thinking. Him reading to me. The sound of his laugh. The way he always smelled like soap and coffee. She looked up at me. And how he called you his North Star. My breath caught. Albert had indeed called me that, but I hadn't realized Emma had absorbed that memory. You were only 4 when he passed, I said softly. It's remarkable. You remember that. I remember important things, she said with the simple certainty of childhood. After dessert, Gregory insisted on washing dishes while Emma and I played a game of Scrabble at the coffee table. The easy domesticity of the scene brought a lump to my throat. This was what I'd been missing, not grand lakeside properties or expensive holiday spreads, but the simple pleasure of family togetherness. As they prepared to leave, Gregory pulled me aside. This was good, Mom. Really good. Next Sunday? I asked. Definitely. He hesitated. I've been thinking about what you said, about what I want versus what Vanessa wants, about standing up for myself, for you. And I've decided to sell the lakehouse, regardless of what happens with Vanessa's job. He spoke quietly, ensuring Emma couldn't hear from where she was putting on her coat. It's beautiful, but it's become a symbol of everything that's gone wrong. The financial strain, the status competition with Vanessa's colleagues, the distance. It's created in our family. I studied his face, seeing resolution there. Have you told Vanessa? Not yet. But I will. Tomorrow. He took a deep breath. There's something else, something I haven't even told Emma yet. My heart quickened. What is it? I've been offered a position with a smaller firm, less prestigious, lower salary, but much better hours. I'd be home for dinner every night, available for Emma's school events. It's the kind of balance Dad always maintained. The mention of Albert struck a chord. My late husband had indeed prioritized family over career advancement, turning down partnerships that would have demanded more of his time. You'd be giving up a lot, I observed. Gregory smiled ruefully. Or gaining a lot depending on how you look at it. He glanced toward Emma. Watching you rebuild your life these past weeks, taking the community center position, reconnecting with old friends, standing up for yourself, it's made me rethink my own choices. Dad always said success isn't measured by a paycheck. No, I agreed. It's measured by peace of mind, by relationships that nourish rather than drain you. Exactly. He hugged me tightly. Thank you, Mom, for everything. After they left, I sat in my quiet apartment, turning over the evening's revelations. Gregory was changing, reevaluating priorities that had seemed fixed for years. It was a profound shift, one I hadn't anticipated when I'd first challenged the loan agreement. The next morning, I called Patricia to discuss modifying the loan terms. I want to be fair, I explained, especially if they're selling the lakehouse. Fairness works both ways, she reminded me. Your financial security matters too. I know. But now that Gregory's committed to weekly family dinners and is reconsidering his career path, I feel more secure about my place in their lives. That was always the real issue, not the money itself. Patricia sighed. You're a better person than most, Maggie. Just promise me one thing. What's that? Get it all in writing. People have good intentions, but memories fade and circumstances change. I agreed, though part of me felt we were moving beyond the need for legal documentation of family obligations. Still, practical considerations remained. The loan represented a significant portion of my retirement savings, and Gregory's changing employment situation added another layer of complexity. Wednesday brought Emma for our usual baking session, but this time she arrived with Vanessa rather than her usual babysitter. I opened my door to find my daughter-in-law standing stiffly in the hallway, her expression carefully neutral. "Hello, Margaret," she said. "I hope you don't mind me dropping Emma off personally. I thought we might talk. Briefly." Emma looked between us with obvious concern. "Is that okay, Grandma? Mom wants to talk to you about important grown-up stuff." "Of course it's okay," I assured her, stepping aside to let them both enter. "Emma, why don't you get started measuring the flour for our cookies? You know where everything is." Once Emma was occupied in the kitchen, Vanessa and I moved to the living room, maintaining a careful distance from each other. "Gregory tells me you had a nice dinner on Sunday," she began, her voice carefully modulated. "We did. You were missed." The social nicety came automatically, though we both knew it wasn't entirely true. Vanessa didn't bother acknowledging the platitude. "He's also told me about his decision to sell the lakehouse and about the job offer he's considering." I waited, unsure where this was headed. "Did you put him up to this?" she asked bluntly. "These decisions would fundamentally change our lives, Margaret. Our status in the community, our financial trajectory, everything we've worked for." "I didn't suggest either decision," I replied truthfully. "Gregory is capable of determining his own priorities." She studied me skeptically. "After a heart-to-heart with his mother, he suddenly wants to sell our vacation home and downshift his career? That seems like quite a coincidence." "Perhaps seeing me rebuild my life after selling my home gave him perspective," I suggested. "Sometimes we don't recognize what matters most until something forces us to reevaluate." Vanessa's composure slipped slightly. "What matters most is financial security. Not having to worry about making ends meet, like I did growing up. Not having to count pennies or lie awake at night wondering how to pay bills." For the first time, I glimpsed what might be driving Vanessa's ambition and status consciousness. "You grew up with financial insecurity," I said, not as a question but as a realization. "My father lost his job when I was 12, she acknowledged stiffly. "We nearly lost our house. My mother took 3 part-time jobs. I swore I would never live that way as an adult." The admission explained much about her character, her drive, her sharp edges, her fear of losing status. "I understand wanting security," I said gently. "But at what cost, Vanessa? You have a beautiful daughter who needs present parents more than she needs a lakefront property." Her eyes flashed. "Don't presume to tell me what my daughter needs." "Our daughter," I corrected, echoing Gregory's words from Thanksgiving. "Emma is part of all of us. She thrives when her family is connected, not divided." From the kitchen came the sound of Emma humming as she worked, oblivious to the tension in the living room. Vanessa glanced toward the sound, her expression softening momentarily. "I need to get back to preparing for a job interview," she said abruptly. "I'll pick Emma up at 6. As she turned to leave, I made a decision. "Vanessa?" I called softly. Whatever happens with the lakehouse, with Gregory's job, with your career, Emma will always have a grandmother who loves her, and you will always have family to fall back on. That's what family means. Not just in good times, but especially in difficult ones. She paused at the door, her back to me. For a moment, I thought she might respond. Instead, she nodded once, almost imperceptibly, and left. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't even particularly friendly. But it was, perhaps, the beginning of understanding. And in families, that was often the first step toward healing. The changes in my family unfolded gradually over the following weeks. Gregory did sell the lakehouse, not in a panic, but through a carefully orchestrated process that yielded enough to repay my loan in full and still leave them with a modest profit. The closing was scheduled for mid-December, just before the holidays. It's actually a relief, Gregory admitted during our Sunday dinner, the third in what had become a cherished weekly tradition. That place represented everything that was pulling us apart. Financial strain, status anxiety, keeping up appearances. "Where will you spend your summer weekends now?" I asked, curious about their plans. We found a small cabin rental on the same lake, actually. A fraction of the cost, a fraction of the maintenance. Emma will still have her beloved lake, but without the baggage that came with ownership. Emma, who was setting the table, looked up. "I like the cabin better anyway. It has bunk beds and a tire swing." Gregory smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. "See? Kids care about experiences, not square footage." It was a philosophy Albert would have approved of wholeheartedly. I thought about telling Gregory this, but decided against it. He was finding his own way back to the values his father had embodied. He didn't need me to point it out. Vanessa's evolution was more complex. She did lose her original position in the corporate restructuring, but was offered a role with reduced hours and slightly lower pay. Initially devastated by what she perceived as a demotion, she had grudgingly come to appreciate the additional time with Emma. She had also, to my surprise, begun occasionally joining our Sunday dinners. The first time she appeared at my door alongside Gregory and Emma, I had to work to hide my shock. "I brought dessert," she said stiffly, holding out a bakery box. "Nothing homemade. I know that's your territory." It wasn't quite an olive branch, but it wasn't hostility either. Over the weeks, her presence became less awkward, though we maintained a careful politeness that never fully warmed to genuine affection. Still, for Emma's sake, and for Gregory's, we were trying. That counted for something. The wellness committee at the community center had become a central part of my new life. What had started as a simple advisory role had expanded into developing programming specifically for seniors transitioning into retirement. "You have a gift for this, Margaret," the center director told me after I'd led a particularly successful workshop on maintaining independence while aging. "The participants connect with you because you're living what you're teaching." Beth had been right about the classes being a benefit of the position. I'd taken up watercolor painting and joined a gentle yoga group, activities I'd never had time for during my working years or my later caregiving ones. And then there was Harry Sullivan, a retired high school science teacher who volunteered at the center's technology help desk. At 71, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, he had a patience that made him perfect for helping seniors navigate smartphones and tablets. We'd started with casual conversations over coffee in the center's cafe, then progressed to lunch at a nearby diner. When he invited me to a symphony performance, I found myself accepting with an ease that surprised me. "Is this a date?" I'd asked directly, unwilling at my age to play games of misunderstanding. Harry had smiled. "I certainly hope so, Margaret. Unless you'd prefer it wasn't. I hadn't dated since Albert's death 15 years earlier. The possibility hadn't even crossed my mind, my identity so wrapped up in being a widow, a mother, a grandmother." But Harry's gentle interest awakened something I'd forgotten, the simple pleasure of being seen as a woman, not just in relation to others, I hadn't told Gregory or Emma about Harry yet. It felt too new, too tender to expose to potential judgment or complications. Beth knew, of course. Her gleeful support was both encouraging and slightly embarrassing. "It's about time you had someone appreciate you properly," she declared when I confessed to accepting the symphony invitation. "Albert would approve, you know. He wouldn't have wanted you alone all these years." She was right. Albert had always been practical about such matters. During his final weeks, when we both knew what was coming, he'd made me promise not to shrivel up after he was gone. "You're too vibrant for that, Maggie," he'd said. "Promise me you'll keep living." I hadn't fully honored that promise until now. The realization brought both guilt and a sense of coming full circle. The Wednesday before Christmas, Emma arrived for our baking session full of excitement about the upcoming holiday. Gregory and Vanessa had invited me to join them for Christmas dinner at their much more modest city home, not the lakehouse. "We're getting a small tree this year," Emma informed me as we rolled out cookie dough. "Mom says we need to be more budget conscious, but I don't mind. Dad's home more now, and he's teaching me chess." I smiled at her easy acceptance of their changing circumstances. "The size of the tree doesn't matter. It's who's around it that counts." "That's what Dad said," she beamed, carefully cutting out star-shaped cookies. "And Mom's not working late. As much. She seems less grumpy, too." It was the most positive assessment of Vanessa I'd heard from Emma in months. "Changes can be hard at first," I observed, "but sometimes they lead to better things." Emma nodded sagely. "Like how you were sad when you sold your house, but now you have your apartment and your community center job and lots of friends." Her perceptiveness occasionally startled me. "Exactly like that." She arranged another cookie on the baking sheet. "Dad says you helped him remember what really matters. He says you stood your ground when it would have been easier not to." I paused, in my work, touched by Gregory's characterization. "Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same," I said softly. "Is that from Harry Potter?" Emma asked, brow furrowed. I laughed. "No, sweetheart. Just something I've learned over the years." When Vanessa arrived to collect Emma, she seemed less rushed than usual, even accepting my offer of a cup of tea while Emma gathered her things. "Gregory tells me you've received the wire transfer from the lakehouse sale," she said, warming her hands on the mug. "Yes, thank you for handling that so promptly." She nodded, eyes on her tea. "I want you to know, I understand why you did what you did. With the loan, setting boundaries." The admission clearly cost her something in pride. "I wouldn't have done it differently in your position." Coming from Vanessa, this was extraordinary. "Thank you for saying that." She met my gaze directly. "I'm not good at family stuff. My own family was complicated, dysfunctional, I guess you'd say. Building careers, accumulating assets, those things made sense to me. They were measurable, controllable. But this past month has taught me there are other kinds of security, like having people who stand by you even when circumstances change," I suggested. "Yes." She twisted her wedding ring. "Gregory's happier at the new firm, less stressed, more present with Emma." A pause. "With me, too." "I'm glad to hear that." "The money from the lakehouse, what will you do with it?" she asked. The question might once have seemed invasive, but now it felt like genuine interest. "Some will go back into my retirement fund, but I'm thinking of setting up a college trust for Emma." Vanessa looked surprised. "You don't have to do that." "I want to. Family looks out for each other. That's something I hope we all remember going forward." She nodded slowly. "I'm working on it." It wasn't a warm embrace or a dramatic reconciliation, but like so many aspects of our evolving family dynamic, it was progress. Small steps toward a healthier relationship. After they left, I called Harry to confirm our plans for the weekend. We'd been seeing each other regularly for nearly a month now, enjoying each other's company with the straightforward appreciation that comes with age and experience. "I was thinking," I said after we'd settled the details for our dinner date, "would you like to join me for Christmas dinner with my family? It's nothing fancy, just my son, his wife, and my granddaughter." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure, Margaret? That's a significant step." "I'm sure," I replied, surprising myself with my certainty. It's time they met. Someone who's becoming important to me. In that case, I'd be honored. After we hung up, I sat by my window watching the city lights, reflecting on the journey of the past 2 months. From the pain of exclusion to a new equilibrium where I was not only included in my family, but expanding its boundaries on my own terms. The loan that had started it all, $175,000 from the sale of my home, had been repaid in full. But the true value had come from what the conflict had forced to the surface: honest conversations, reassessment of priorities, recognition of worth beyond financial contributions. My phone chimed with a text from Gregory. "Mom, Vanessa just told me about your college fund idea for Emma. We're touched. Thank you." And then a second message. "Dad would be proud of you." I know I am. I brushed away a tear, typing back, "I'm proud of you too. See you Sunday." The simple exchange encompassed so much: acknowledgement, appreciation, continuity. Family in all its complicated glory. As Christmas approached, I found myself looking forward rather than back. To holiday dinner with Gregory, Vanessa, and Emma, to introducing Harry to my family, to the next chapter of my life as a woman standing firmly in her own worth. At 67, I had discovered that it wasn't too late to set boundaries, to demand respect, to build new connections. To remember that I was not just someone's mother, someone's grandmother, someone's widow, but Margaret Walker, complete in myself, with value that extended beyond the roles I played in others' lives. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been moments of devastating loneliness, of doubt, of grief for relationships I feared lost forever. But standing my ground had ultimately led not to greater isolation, but to healthier connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation or convenience. As snow began to fall outside my window, I made a silent toast to Albert, wherever he was. "I kept my promise," I whispered. "I'm still living, really living." And for the first time in years, that felt absolutely true. Christmas Eve arrived with a gentle snowfall that transformed the city into a greeting card scene. I stood at my apartment window, watching white flakes dance in the streetlights, feeling a sense of peace that had been absent for too long. The past week had brought final preparations, gifts wrapped in silver paper with blue ribbons, my mother's gingerbread recipe baked into festive shapes, a small tree adorned with ornaments I'd saved from the house sale. The most precious ones were those Gregory had made as a child. Salt dough stars painted in uneven strokes, a clothespin reindeer with googly eyes, a paper chain that had somehow survived 40 years of holidays. Harry called at precisely 7, his voice warm through the phone. "Still on for our Christmas Eve coffee before I head to my daughter's?" "Absolutely," I confirmed. "The cafe on the corner is open until 9. They're doing something special with peppermint mochas." We'd decided to share Christmas Eve coffee and exchange small gifts before spending the actual holiday with our respective families. Tomorrow would be my first Christmas with Gregory's family since the Thanksgiving confrontation, and Harry would join us for dessert, his official introduction as someone significant in my life. The cafe was nearly empty when we arrived, just a few other patrons seeking warmth and holiday cheer. Harry wore a red sweater with a subtle pattern that wasn't quite a Christmas design but suggested festivity nonetheless. The silver-framed glasses perched on his nose had tiny snowflakes etched into the sides, a detail so charming it made me smile. "Happy Christmas Eve, Margaret," he said, passing me a small box wrapped in green paper. "I know we said we'd keep it simple, but I saw this and thought of you." Inside the box was a delicate silver pendant, a North Star with a tiny diamond at its center. "Gregory mentioned at Sunday dinner that Albert used to call you his North Star," Harry explained, watching my expression. "I hope it's not overstepping." I touched the pendant gently. "It's perfect. Thank you." I reached into my purse for his gift, a vintage fountain pen I'd found at an antique shop, knowing his passion for handwritten letters. "Merry Christmas, Harry." We lingered over our coffee, discussing holiday traditions and sharing stories of Christmases past. Harry talked about his late wife Martha's obsession with matching family pajamas, a tradition his daughters and grandchildren continued in her memory. I told him about Albert's annual Christmas Eve reading of A Child's Christmas in Wales, a tradition Gregory had recently revived with Emma. "It's strange and wonderful, isn't it?" Harry mused. "Starting new chapters at our age, finding connection when we least expected it." "Terrifying, too," I admitted. "Introducing you to my family tomorrow. I feel like a teenager bringing home a first date." He chuckled. "I polished my shoes. Twice." "They'll love you," I assured him, though a flutter of anxiety persisted. Gregory had seemed supportive when I'd mentioned Harry, but Vanessa's reaction remained unpredictable. And Emma, how would she feel about her grandmother having a gentleman friend? Christmas morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight glinting off fresh snow. I'd arranged to arrive at Gregory and Vanessa's at 3, with Harry joining us at 5, for dessert. The timing felt important, giving my immediate family time to settle before introducing this new element. I dressed with unusual care. A forest green dress with a cowl neck, the North Star pendant catching the light. My best black boots. The brightly wrapped gifts for Gregory, Vanessa, and Emma filled a large tote bag, thoughtful items I'd selected with specific intention. For Gregory, first edition copies of the mystery novels he'd loved as a teenager. For Vanessa, an elegant, leather portfolio for job interviews embossed with her initials. For Emma, art supplies and a certificate for painting classes that we could attend together. The rideshare driver helped me carry everything to Gregory's door, a townhouse in a pleasant neighborhood that represented their new, more modest lifestyle. The poinsettia wreath on the door and twinkling lights in the windows created a welcoming atmosphere that the lakehouse, for all its grandeur, had never achieved. Gregory answered my knock, wearing a ridiculous sweater featuring a three-dimensional reindeer nose that actually lit up. "Merry Christmas, Mom!" he exclaimed, embracing me warmly. "Let me take those packages." The inside of the house smelled of pine and cinnamon, a Christmas tree glowing in the corner of the living room. Not as imposing as the ones Vanessa had preferred in the past, but charming in its slightly uneven shape and eclectic ornaments. Emma raced down the stairs, wearing a red velvet dress and mismatched Christmas socks. "Grandma, you're here! Can we open presents now?" Vanessa appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron, something I'd never seen her wear before. "Merry Christmas, Margaret," she said, and though her smile wasn't effusive, it seemed genuine. "Dinner's almost ready." The meal was simpler than previous holiday spreads, but the atmosphere was infinitely warmer. We pulled crackers, wore paper crowns, and shared stories between bites of roast turkey and cranberry sauce. Gregory talked about his new position at the smaller firm, surprising me with his enthusiasm for the pro bono work they encouraged. "I'm actually representing a senior living facility in a zoning dispute," he explained. "They can't afford fancy corporate rates, but the work is so much more meaningful than the mergers and acquisitions I used to handle." Vanessa, too, seemed more relaxed despite her career adjustment. "The reduced hours mean I can volunteer at Emma's school twice a month," she mentioned. "I'm helping with their Career Day program." These small shifts represented massive changes in their priorities, changes I would never have predicted during our Thanksgiving confrontation. The financial recalibration had forced other reassessments, creating space for values that money couldn't buy. After dinner, as we gathered around the tree for presents, my phone chimed with a text from Harry. On my way, bringing extra dessert just in case. I felt a flutter of nervousness. Gregory, Emma, Vanessa, I said, setting down my coffee cup. I wanted to remind you that my friend Harry will be joining us shortly, for dessert. Your friend, huh? Gregory teased gently. Emma says you've been talking about him quite a bit during your baking sessions, Emma giggled. You said he has nice eyes. I felt my cheeks warm. Well, he does. Vanessa studied me with uncharacteristic softness. It'll be nice to meet someone who makes you happy, Margaret. The doorbell rang. Precisely at 5. Gregory answered while I smoothed my dress and touched the pendant at my neck for reassurance. Harry stepped into the living room, handsome in a charcoal sweater and carrying a bakery box tied with red ribbon. He extended his hand to Gregory. A pleasure to meet you. Margaret speaks of you constantly. Gregory shook his hand warmly. Welcome to our home. Any friend of Mom's is welcome here. The introduction to Vanessa and Emma went equally smoothly. Harry had brought extra Christmas cookies, my late wife's recipe, which my daughter still bakes every year, and a small gift for Emma, a kaleidoscope that created snowflake patterns when held to the light. My classroom had one of these, Harry explained as Emma examined it with delight. I taught high school science for 40 years. There's real physics in how it creates those patterns. As the evening progressed, I watched Harry charm my family with his gentle humor and genuine interest in their lives. He drew Gregory into a conversation about chess, discovered Vanessa had attended the same university as his younger daughter, and listened attentively as Emma described her school's upcoming science fair. Vanessa pulled me aside as I helped serve coffee in the kitchen. He's lovely, Margaret, she said quietly. I'm glad you found someone. Thank you, I replied, touched by her approval. It's still new, but it feels right. She nodded thoughtfully. Life takes unexpected turns, doesn't it? 6 months ago, I was focused on climbing the corporate ladder and maintaining a certain image. Now I'm volunteering at a public school and living in a townhouse half the size of what I thought we needed. Are you happier? I asked directly. She considered the question seriously. I'm more present, less anxious about what others think. And Gregory and I are finding our way back to each other without the pressure of maintaining appearances. She glanced toward the living room, where Gregory and Harry were laughing about something, while Emma demonstrated her kaleidoscope. I have you to thank for that, in a way? Me? Your standing your ground forced us to face realities we'd been avoiding. It wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary. Coming from Vanessa, this acknowledgement meant everything. We rejoined the others, and I found myself seated next to Harry on the sofa, his hand discreetly finding mine as Emma distributed her homemade Christmas cards to everyone. For Harry, too, she announced, presenting him with a slightly lopsided card featuring a snowman with a distinctly scientific-looking telescope. Because you're Grandma's special friend. Harry accepted the card with genuine appreciation. This is wonderful, Emma. The exact right combination of art and astronomy. As the evening wound down, Gregory insisted on calling a car service for us rather than having us navigate public transportation in the cold. It's late, and it's Christmas, he said firmly. Let us do this for you both. Standing in the entryway saying goodbyes, I was struck by how much had changed since that painful Thanksgiving video call. Emma hugged me tightly, whispering, I like Harry, Grandma. He looks at you the way Dad looks at Mom when she's not being grumpy. Gregory embraced me next. This was good, Mom. Really good. Let's not wait until next Sunday for another family dinner. Even Vanessa offered a genuine hug. Merry Christmas, Margaret. Thank you for the portfolio. It's exactly what I needed for interviews. In the car heading back toward our respective apartments, Harry took my hand. Your family is wonderful. They're a work in progress, I replied. We all are. The best kind of work, he said, smiling. We arranged to meet the following afternoon for a walk in the park, weather permitting. As we said goodnight outside my building, he kissed me gently. Our first, though it felt as natural as if we'd been doing it for years. Back in my apartment, I removed the North Star pendant carefully, placing it on my nightstand where the diamond caught the moonlight streaming through my window. I thought about Albert, about the journey of the past months, about the expanding definition of family that now included not just Gregory, Vanessa, and Emma, but Beth, my community center colleagues, and now Harry. My phone chimed with a final Christmas text from Gregory. Thank you for standing your ground, Mom. It changed everything in all the right ways. I smiled, typing back, Love you too. Merry Christmas. Standing at my window, watching the city sleep under its blanket of snow, I felt a profound sense of completion. The $175,000 loan had been repaid, but the true transaction had been an exchange of honesty for authenticity, of confrontation for understanding, of loss for renewal. At 67, I had reclaimed not just my financial security, but my place in my family and my identity as a woman in her own right. I had remembered what it meant to stand up for myself, to set boundaries without apology, to build a life that honored all parts of who I was. Mother, grandmother, nurse, friend, and now, perhaps, partner. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, of heart-wrenching isolation, of wondering whether I'd gone too far. But on this peaceful Christmas night, the answer was clear. Standing firm had allowed everyone to find their footing on more solid ground. What had begun as a painful exclusion had transformed into something I couldn't have imagined. A family stronger for having been tested, relationships more genuine for having faced hard truths, and a future brighter for being built on mutual respect rather than obligation. As I prepared for bed, I realized the lesson I would carry forward, the one I hoped Emma would learn from watching her grandmother's journey. True family isn't defined by invitations to dinner or perfectly curated holiday celebrations. It's built on seeing each other's value beyond utility, on making space for growth and change, on standing firm in one's worth while remaining open to reconciliation, and sometimes, standing your ground is the surest path to finding your way home, again. 1 year later. Spring sunshine streamed through the large windows of my new home, a modest but charming 2-bedroom cottage just a 10-minute drive from Gregory and Vanessa's townhouse. The garden was bursting with daffodils and early tulips, planted last fall in a family project that had seen Gregory, Vanessa, Emma, and even Harry on their knees in the dirt, following my directions with varying degrees of success. I think these tulips are plotting a rebellion, Harry observed, joining me at the window with 2 cups of coffee. They're growing in formations rather than the rows we planted. I laughed, accepting the mug. Nature has its own ideas about design. That's why I never argue with plants. The past year had unfolded in ways I couldn't have predicted during that transformative Christmas. My position at the community center had expanded into a part-time directorship of senior wellness programs across 3 facilities. Harry and I had settled into a comfortable relationship that balanced togetherness with independence. He maintained his own apartment while spending most weekends at my cottage. The money from my loan repayment had been carefully managed. Some invested for my future security, some placed in Emma's college fund, and a portion used for the down payment on this cottage with its garden and guest room for when my sister Catherine visited from Arizona. Most importantly, the fragile reconnection with Gregory and his family had strengthened into something far more genuine than our previous relationship. Sunday dinners remained sacred, now rotating between our homes, but we no longer needed a formal schedule to ensure we saw each other. Gregory often stopped by midweek to help with household projects, or simply to share a cup of coffee. Emma spent 1 weekend a month with me, learning gardening, baking, and recently watercolor painting, which I'd continued pursuing. Even Vanessa had found her footing in our reconfigured family dynamic. After several interviews, she'd landed a position with a boutique marketing firm specializing in nonprofit clients. Lower pressure, more flexible hours, and work that unexpectedly aligned with her values. The status-conscious corporate climber had gradually given way to a woman who found satisfaction in helping organizations with limited budgets maximize their impact. "What time is everyone arriving?" Harry asked, checking his watch. Today was a special gathering, not just our usual Sunday dinner, but a celebration of Emma's 10th birthday. Around noon, Beth and her husband are coming too. Catherine sent a package that arrived yesterday. I've hidden it with the other gifts. Harry nodded, a slight nervousness in his demeanor that I'd noticed all morning. "And you're sure you want to wait until everyone's here? We could talk privately first." I touched his hand gently. "Whatever it is, I think it's fine to share with everyone present. Unless you've changed your mind?" "Never," he said firmly. "Just traditional jitters, I suppose." Before I could question him further, my phone chimed with a text from Gregory. Running about 15 minutes late, Emma insisted on picking flowers from the park for the table centerpiece. I smiled at the message. Such a small thing. My granddaughter, wanting to contribute to her birthday celebration, but it represented the healthier family culture we'd all worked to build. Her thoughtfulness was flourishing in an environment where adults modeled consideration for each other rather than competition or status-seeking. By 1 o'clock, the cottage was filled with the cheerful chaos of family celebration. Emma proudly arranged her wildflowers in the crystal vase that had been my mother's. Beth and her husband David chatted with Harry about community center politics. Gregory helped me in the kitchen while Vanessa set the table, working together with the easy coordination that comes from regular practice. "Mom?" Gregory said quietly as we transferred the last of the potato salad into a serving bowl. "I've been meaning to tell you something important." I looked up, noting the serious tone. "Everything okay?" "More than okay." He smiled, checking that we weren't overheard. "Vanessa and I have been seeing a marriage counselor for the past 6 months. We should have done it years ago. The financial reset forced us to look at patterns we'd been avoiding, and the counseling helped us rebuild from a healthier foundation." "I'm proud of you both," I said softly. "That takes courage." He nodded. "We remembered something you said during that confrontation on the deck at Thanksgiving about choices. You said things don't evolve, people make choices. You were right. We're making better choices now." The moment was interrupted by Emma's excited call from the living room. "Cake time! Grandma, Harry, everyone, come on!" The birthday cake, lemon, with raspberry filling, Emma's favorite, took center stage on the dining table. 10 candles flickered as we sang Happy Birthday, Emma's face glowing with joy as she made her wish and blew them out in one determined breath. As Emma opened presents amid exclamations of delight, I noticed Harry growing increasingly fidgety. When the gift opening concluded, he cleared his throat with unusual formality. "If everyone wouldn't mind, I have one more presentation to make," he announced. "Not just for Emma, but for all of you, particularly Margaret." The room quieted as Harry reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. My heart stuttered as he turned to face me directly. "Margaret Walker," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "This past year has been one of the most wonderful of my life. Getting to know you, your strength, your compassion, your willingness to stand your ground when it matters, has been a privilege." He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring with a small diamond flanked by sapphires. "I'm not proposing. We change anything about our arrangement that works so well. I'm not asking you to give up your independence or this lovely home. But I am asking if you would consider making our partnership official, becoming my wife while we each maintain the separate spaces that give us room to breathe." The room held its collective breath. Emma's eyes were wide with excitement. Gregory and Vanessa exchanged glances of surprised approval. Beth was practically vibrating with delight. For a moment, I was transported back to that painful day when Vanessa had told me I wasn't welcome for Thanksgiving dinner. How that exclusion had set in motion a chain of events that led here, to this room filled with people who truly saw me, to this man who valued me exactly as I was, to this life built on my own terms. Yes, I said simply. Yes, I would be honored to be your wife, Harry Sullivan. As he slipped the ring onto my finger, Emma was the first to break into applause, followed quickly by everyone else. Gregory embraced me, whispering, "Dad would be so happy for you, Mom." I knew he was right. Albert had always wanted me to live fully, not just exist in the margins of others' lives. This moment, this joy, was possible because I had finally honored that wish, had finally remembered my own worth. Later, as everyone enjoyed cake in the garden, Harry and I stole a quiet moment on the porch swing. "When will we tell them the other news?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with mischief. I laughed softly. "Let's give them time to adjust to this surprise first. The news that we're planning to use some of our combined retirement funds to open a senior wellness cafe at the community center can wait a few weeks." He squeezed my hand. "You're remarkable, Margaret. Do you know that? The way you've rebuilt your life after standing your ground? It's inspired me to think bigger about my own retirement years." From the garden came the sound of Emma's laughter, as she showed Beth a new dance move. Gregory and Vanessa sat side by side on the garden bench, her head resting comfortably on his shoulder. David was examining my rose bushes with professional interest, being an amateur gardener himself. It's strange, I reflected. If Vanessa hadn't excluded me from that Thanksgiving dinner, none of this might have happened. I might still be the accommodating mother, sitting in the background, grateful for whatever scraps of inclusion were thrown my way. "Sometimes the hardest moments lead to the greatest growth," Harry observed. "You taught your family that respect is non-negotiable. You taught Emma by example what a strong woman looks like, and you reminded yourself of your own value." I touched the North Star pendant that had become my daily accessory, thinking of all the changes a single act of standing firm had initiated. The loan that had started it all, $175,000 that represented my home, my security, my independence, had ultimately purchased something far more valuable than a lakefront property. It had bought clarity, courage, and connection built on mutual respect rather than obligation. As evening approached and our guests began to depart, Emma hugged me fiercely. "This was the best birthday ever, Grandma, and now you're going to be Mrs. Sullivan, too." "I'll still be your Grandma Margaret," I assured her. "Some things never change." "But some things should change," she said with unexpected wisdom. "Like how people treat each other. That's what you showed everyone." Her insight, so clear, so simple, summed up everything the past year had taught us all. Sometimes change is exactly what a family needs. Sometimes standing your ground is the surest path to higher ground. And sometimes, at 68, you discover that life's most meaningful chapters may still be waiting to be written. As the sunset painted the garden in gold, I looked around at the home and life I'd built. Not in spite of the difficulties, but because of them. The journey that had begun with exclusion had led to a fuller inclusion than I could have imagined, in my family, in my community, and in my own heart. The loan had been repaid in full, but its true value had been in teaching all of us what was truly priceless. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.